Jeff Fuller back with you. Jay Fuller Interviews. Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube as well as Twitter, Instagram. You can certainly subscribe there. Jay Fuller Interviews on the YouTube channel, as well as we are on iTunes and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. That's the Backfire Podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews. I love stories because they make our story better. And one with a great story is Tony Bruin. Tony, how are you?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for making the time. And I just have to bring up in this picture behind me, and the number that you wore when you were at Syracuse is number 30. Now, I have to admit that when I was in high school, I'm a little bit younger than you. And that number 30, I attributed to Billy Owens. But as I've done some more research, I see that you are quite the player yourself. Why did you choose number 30?
That was the number that I had in high school. So it followed with me, and was also after that, it was thankfully it was the number that my son had. He wore it at Iona College.
Excellent. Where did you grow up, Tony?
I'm sorry?
Where did you grow up?
In Queens, New York, in Long Island City. I was born in the Bronx, and pretty much until around, I would say the second grade, I was in Harlem, New York, and then my dad and my mom moved into Ravenswood Projects in Long Island City, New York.
Now, I had the privilege of interviewing Kenny Anderson a little while ago, and there's something about New York guards. Can you just tell me what it was like growing up playing on the playgrounds, or did you start with a different sport when you were younger?
I didn't really pick up basketball until maybe the 7th or 8th grade, which for basketball in New York is kind of late, believe it or not, although most people look at it as kind of early. But I picked it up around then. But, once the bug bit me, it was all that I did from day to night, especially on the weekends. From first thing we do after we ate some breakfast was head to the park and stay there all day. There was times where my mom actually had to come get me to eat dinner and stuff. So basketball in New York City in those days was just a big thing, it brought me friends. It was almost like a whole new way of life once I got into the basketball game.
Now, did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me. She was one of my big friends.
Who really pushed you to become a better basketball player? Was it a best friend? Was it a rival? Was it a coach that kind of took you under his wing?
Well, I had a elementary school buddy that played. His name was Quinn Smith. He ended up playing for a small school in Connecticut. He was the one that first had me play at the school on a CYO team because I was always so much taller than most of the kids at my school. He just kept saying, "Oh, you got to come play basketball with us. You got to come play basketball with us." And I was really skinny and awkward at the time. And when I first started, I didn't have much success. And he just kept pushing me to stick with it. And eventually, as I started to get better and it started to pay off, and I really took it upon myself to keep playing. But I would have to give it to my elementary school buddy that started me. Believe it or not, Eugene Waldron, who also played for Syracuse, he was one of the ones that introduced me to a coach that would probably take me to the next level and really put my basketball game on the map for others to see. He's from Queensbridge Projects, where a lot of great basketball players and rappers and different entrepreneurs came from. And he would come out to my project because everybody was telling about this kid, which was me, that was starting to be so good and block shots and do this and be able to dunk flat-footed, just standing straight up. So he said he came out to see, and he told me I needed to come back to Queensbridge and play against some real competition and meet his coach, Hank Carter, who was a legendary coach in New York City, who started the famous Wheelchair Classic. I think now it's an NBA game, but at the time it was a high school all-star game where players from every borough competed against each other and raised money for people that were in the wheelchairs to get new equipment and new wheelchairs and everything from Goldwater Hospital on Roosevelt Island. So it really became really big. But once I started playing for him, he got me on the AAU circuit, and that's when I really started finding out about the different levels of basketball.
How tall are you, Tony?
Well, I list myself at 6'5", but to be honest, I'm about 6'4".
And certainly a leaper. Before we get into some of your athleticism at Syracuse, did you ever play at Rucker, or you talk about those different games? What was it like back when you were growing up?
Yeah, New York is like that is because once you start playing and you know how everybody wants to represent their boroughs, you know, everybody's, you know, you get where you have to constantly be proving yourself. You know, it's like a battle of the court on the blacktop. So you always want to play in the best tournaments. Harlem Record is just known as like the the top level, like you know, if you can do good there, then you're really set as far as being a New York City legendary player. So everybody wants to play their best there. I mean, usually the basketball court is full of people, and everything you do is magnified. So you really don't want to make mistakes. You really want to do your best to impress people there.
Oh, for sure. Tony Bruin makes some time. You went to Syracuse. Could you just talk about that situation? Is Syracuse where you wanted to go? What was that recruitment? And what did it look like for you back in 79 through 83?
Okay, so I had some real good luck going to some of the top camps that we had for high school players to compete. You know, we had some of the greatest coaches in the world that used to work there as coaches and clinicians and trainers and stuff, like Rick Pitino, Calipari, you name it. They all worked for Howard Garfinkel at 5-star. So I attended 5-star and I did really well. I think I won the most promising player. So between that and some other all-star games that I played in and did really well, I pretty much had my pick of schools that I could have went to college-wise. But the schools that it came down to for me personally was South Carolina, because my dad and everybody on his side of the family is from South Carolina. And they had Coach McGuire, Frank McGuire, who's another legendary coach from New York City, who was also bringing a lot of New York City players to South Carolina. And I really felt comfortable with him and his whole circle of coaches. And I also knew that I had a lot of family down there. I came down to Louisville because I really, really enjoyed my visit there. I loved the way that they played. I was a big fan of Darryl Griffith, Dr. Duncanstein, and a lot of the big guards, small forwards that played for the Cardinals had went on to the NBA, so they had a great system for players to show what they can do with that program. And then Syracuse, of course, I just loved Coach Boeheim. I think he outworked all the other coaches. I mean, everywhere that I went, Coach Boeheim was there. Every little tournament in New York, I'd go to Los Angeles. Coach Boeheim was there. Wherever I went to go play, you know, AAU or whatever it was, a little backstreet tournament, there was Coach Boeheim. I mean, Queensbridge, Ravenswood Projects, right there holding court with the people. I mean, nobody worked harder, and that really just impressed me. And then, of course, Louis Carnesecca at St. John's. So my choices came down to St. John's, Syracuse, Louisville, and South Carolina.
Share a little bit about this new Big East. Isn't anything that I find familiar, because my brother grew up a Georgetown fan. I love Syracuse and just UConn. It was just a lot of fun, but now it's just so different. For you being a part of a conference that just was basketball players, basketball minded, was that pretty spectacular for you? What are your thoughts when you think back to what a prime season it was for the Big East?
Well, when Coach Boeheim was recruiting me, he was talking to me mostly about how great it's going to be to play in the Carrier Dome, because at that time we were in Manley Fieldhouse, which I believe seated about 11,000 at capacity, and they usually had crowds about 10 something. And he was telling me about the arena that was going to be done by my sophomore year, which would seat about 35,000 people, which was just hard to imagine. And then he mentioned a little bit about we're going to be playing in this league. There's a lot of talk about this league that we're looking at playing in. And you'll get a chance to play against a lot of your friends and stuff that, you know, go to some of the schools, and your family will be able to see you playing. It's just going to be great. And at the time, looking back, I think I remember thinking more about the Carrier Dome and being excited and thinking about how exciting it's going to be for this league that he mentioned, something, the Big East. I had no idea, though, once the league started, that it was going to be as exciting or was going to be what it turned out to be. I mean, it was just, we played Villanova, and I had my friends like Pickney playing and Stuart Granger. We go to Boston College. I had my friends playing like Adam, Burnett, and go to St. John's. Chris is there, Chris Mullen. I mean, it was just, Billy Goodwin. Oh, I mean, it was just like to play against some of the same guys that I grew up with or played in tournaments with, like locally when I would go to Philadelphia or the Boston Shootout, and to see how everybody was doing. And it was just amazing, man. It was, I think the league just took everybody by storm, because you could relate to the players. It was players that you actually saw grow up and saw them in high school, and now you're seeing them in the league, It's just, it was just really exciting. I mean, I know they still have it, but for me, it's a little different. And I'm not trying to be biased, but some of the teams, it's just, they're kind of foreign to me now.
Hey, Tony, talk to me a little bit about going to the Carrier Dome, playing there. Did you ever get nervous playing in front of so many people? And just being in a dome, they're kind of seated distant compared to some other gyms. But first question, I guess, is your high school, did they sell out? Were fans right on top of you? And what type of change was that to play in such a huge venue like the Carrier Dome?
A lot of people have asked me that. It's kind of funny because they were like saying, well, the dome is nice and everything, but I know at Manley Fieldhouse, everybody's right on top of you, and you got 10,000 people, and the arena was mostly sold out. But for me, my best memories were at the Carrier Dome because as a freshman, I might have played maybe 15, 20 minutes a game. And then when we got to the Carrier Dome, my sophomore year, it was like a couple of games in, I was starting. So my best memories for me on the court, probably personally, is at the Dome. And I remember people saying, Syracuse is, I don't know why they did an arena that big for the size of the town. There's no way they're ever going to fill a 30-something thousand feet arena. It's going to be pretty empty playing in it. I, kind of thought about that, but you always want to have a positive attitude. But when the game started, and we're in the dome and we're rocking and rolling, and we got like Leo Rounds throwing me alley-oops from half court and stuff, and crowds just started coming more and more each game, and then it just became super exciting to me. It erased any memories I had of Manley Fieldhouse quickly.
So Tony Bruin making some time, staying with us, sharing stories about his time at Syracuse and other things as well. But I just look at basketball is now. It's always on TV. There's always podcasts and so much media about it. For you, were you just reading the paper to see what guys were doing, whether it's in the NBA or in the Big East, or just your friends following them? Or did you stay on top of what was taking place as they pursued their college career as well?
You mean when I was there playing, at the time that I was playing on? Yeah, it's funny when you look back, when you think when you're a college student, especially then, as opposed to now where everything is not so internet-based and right at the tip of your fingers, we were really kind of out of touch with a lot of things. We didn't follow politics the way you do now, and we didn't follow this and we didn't follow that. All we kind of followed was basketball. We were in our own little bubble. But with the Big East, that was different. I'd get the paper every day and try to keep up with everything. Okay, what did David Russell do at St. John's today? What did John Pannone do at Villanova? What did Pickney do? So we really, I think, were following each other. Every little bit of Big East news or stuff that we could get to follow each other. We did. I think it was like a nice little family. So if I didn't look at anything else in the news, I knew what was going on in the Big East during that time.
So Tony, your Instagram is Tony Red Bruin 30. Where did the nickname Red come from?
That same coach that I told you about, Hank Carter, he's a legendary coach out of New York City. Real good friends with Lester Roberts and the whole Brooklyn, USA crew. It's funny. I don't know if he used to just play with us or whatever. He always would pretend, I guess to keep us from getting a big head, he always would pretend that he couldn't remember our names. So he always called us nicknames like Peanut or Rockhead or whatever like that. And because when I was young, I mean, it's hard to tell now, but I had I wouldn't say a whole, but I had an afro with bright red hair. So he acted like he couldn't remember my name. Boy, Red, come here. So he started calling me Red, and it just caught on from there.
And now you have a website, Redcollection.net, and you guys do a lot of different apparel. How did you get connected with the site, and what do you guys provide at Redcollection.net?
It kind of came as actually the last alumni weekend game that we had up in Syracuse before the virus came around. I was a buddy of mine, fellow alumni from Syracuse, a gentleman by the name of Peter Haber. He lives in New Jersey, so he picked me up from New Jersey airport. We had made plans, and we were going to drive to the game together. And when we was on there, we hadn't seen each other. It must have been over 30 years, and we started talking and reminiscing all of the good times at Syracuse and all of the funny stories and everything. So he started asking me what I'm doing now, and I told him I'm doing some coaching with AAU and some high school coaching, and working with some kids at the school, some discipline stuff and mentoring and counseling. And he was like, "That's good." He was happy that I was involved with basketball, and he was like, "Do you have any regrets and everything?" And I just mentioned to him off the cuff. I said, I was thinking the other day, I wish I would do some kind of retro clothing thing. It's always on my mind. Do some stuff, some basketball things and more things with maybe some sneakers and some nice retro stuff. I like the old school stuff. I'm like an old school guy. And he was like, that's funny. Me too. We should do it sometime. And really didn't think nothing about it. We had a good laugh. And when we got back after a great weekend, about 3 weeks later, he sent me some samples of stuff. And he's like, Red, check this out. And I'm looking at it. And I'm like, wow, this is some nice stuff. And he was like, yeah, this is the beginning of our Red collection, and he just said Red collection. And then we started talking about it, and we decided to go with it, and I loved it and everything. He said, what are we going to call it? I said, well, I like the name you told me, Red Collection. So when we ended up doing the website, we was able to keep the Red Collection, and all we had to do was add .net, and the line was born.
Very nice. Congratulations. And it's fun seeing those things. I just look at the difference in the shoes from when you were playing. You can't really see it in the picture behind me. I can see it here. You just share, did you have your ankles taped when you played, or
yeah. Well, most people that really don't play sports that intricately don't know. I think, with football, basketball, I'm imagining with soccer, everything, you have usually a soft cast made out of tape that your trainer has to use. So that's another reason you always had to get to practice early, because you had to get this cast put on your both ankles. And the thing is so tight, usually at the end of practice to get it off, it's a mechanism that you use to get it off that they put on the side and they just tear it down. So, because sprained ankles and twisted ankles are so prevalent in sports these days, it's almost a must to have it.
Yeah, I remember, and it was a very small school, but they used to wrap my knee with an ace bandage. Now I look back and I'm like, man, these kids, they have all these cool looking things, and I just had a ace bandage wrapped around my knee. But just loving to play. Why did you love to play basketball?
I think I got a lot of joy out of playing blacktop basketball in the tournaments around New York City. It just seemed like the excitement that we would have, having the whole neighborhood surrounding. I mean, for all you can see straight out with neighborhood friends and fans and people. And for that time, we weren't playing for money. I mean, we weren't even really, we always used to love getting trophies, but that wasn't even the bottom line. The bottom line was just the pride, the ability to go say, we beat this neighborhood, or we beat this team from Manhattan, or we beat this team from Bronx or Queens, and say that we're number one, and everybody, it was just bragging rights, at that time, with basketball just meant so much in New York City to say we were the best and play against the best. Those were some of the, the best of times, I think, playing basketball, the grassroots part of it.
Yeah. So, Tony, when you coach guys now, younger players, do they have that same appreciation? I don't want to be like that old guy saying, get off my lawn.
Yeah.
When I see kids that they can only play if there's referees and a scoreboard, it's not like the parks are empty compared to when I grow up, or at least in my own mind. When you coach, how do you see that drive and passion in kids just to love the game?
You're right. And
whether it's been
I never wanted to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy either. Like, oh, back when I played, we did this, that. But you almost have to say that's true. These days, I don't know, it's because kids have more options of things they can do with the video games, and the electronics and the phones and all of the different apps that they can be on. But, you still have the hardcore guys, the gym rats, and they separate themselves right away. The guys that's the first one to practice and the last one to leave, and the ones that's always coming up to you. Can you help me work on this? Can you help me work on that? And those are usually the guys that you see now that make it these days. The other guys, and I laugh because I have a guy that I work with, he calls them posers. The guys that just play, so they can say they play basketball, they play football, or the girls or that, they kind of they'll weed themselves out as you start going up to the next level. But the guys that are serious about it and the guys that make it now are the ones that really have the determination and the real love for the game, And that's nothing wrong with it.
No, I think it's all part of growing up, and you just identify where that passion is or where you want to put your commitment. And I think that's wise. I think it's so important to have people like you involved in students' lives, coaching them and helping them with life skills as well. And that kind of leads to the next question. Sometimes college and after provides opportunities that you might regret or you might get into that you wish you hadn't. How have you had to be resilient through adversity? What are some things that you have been through that now you can use to say, hey, I made a mistake, but just follow what I've done to change those things?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that, Jeff, because as we were going back earlier and when we were talking about the success that I had from playing basketball, and I did so well early on, that I had I had everything that you could imagine to come at you. Like the State Farm commercial, life comes at you fast. I mean, things came at me so fast as a youngster, and and I was right there smack in the middle of it. With the cars and the fast bars and the drugs and the alcohol and the girls and the having the whole posse around you and everything. And at the time, you have some people that try to tell you that they've been there before and they see the way you're going, and things don't usually end up well like that. But sometimes when you're young, you think you have all the answers, or you know better, or you say, well, what happened to that person is not going to happen to me. So I made probably just about all the mistakes a young person could go through that a person that has some experience tells them not to. And the only advice that I could give now, and all this, of course, is looking back, is to really achieve your goals and have a 100% chance of making it. Is you have to have a focus that is undisturbable. You can't let outside forces come in and take you from your goal of getting to where you want to be. You can't blame it on other people. It's got to come from you. You got to, when other guys are going to the party and everything like that, and you've got games, or you've got a certain, you want to get to the NBA, or you want to get to the NFL, you've got to be willing to take the sacrifices, and maybe there's some friends that you might be growing up with now, and you've known them all your life, but if you know that they're not doing the right things and you're trying to do this, when they go that way, you got to go that way. There's a time and a place where when you come at life, even though it might be some people that you grew up with, if they're not trying to reach the same goals that you are, then there's really no reason for you to be with them after your childhood days like that. You know what I mean? I mean, when you start talking about, I'm just saying, if you have professional aspirations, or even not even sports professional aspirations, or you have different aspirations, then you need to gravitate towards people that has those same aspirations, not people that might be doing different things, because eventually you're going to have to make a choice, or the choice might be made.
Yeah. Tony, for you, when you look back, do you wish you would have had cell phones, smartphones, iPhones, or are you glad that you didn't have that technology back then?
It's funny. Yeah, of course, I probably wish I did. But for me, knowing me, I'm glad that I didn't, because I found enough trouble without them. I could imagine what I would do with a cell phone and all the types of stuff we have these days, just the problems with the girls and staying on focus and, just such easy communications. More people having access to me. No, that would have been a bad thing for me right now. So I know it's not easy for kids these days, when you add this element into it. But at the same time, the prizes are even bigger. So, if you want it, you got to be focused, man.
Yeah. So, Tony, your time at Syracuse, Coach Boeheim, can you just talk about the relationship that you had with him and now that you have with him? Was it tenuous? Was it just hard because he was a coach and you were a kid? And as a grown, or from day one, did you really have an affinity towards Coach?
From day one, I felt I had a connection with him, because he wasn't as big then as he is now, but the same way that I guess he saw something in me, I saw that in him. Like I said, nobody outworked Coach Boeheim. They probably didn't have the budget that they had now, that they did back then. So a lot of those times where, like I said, I would come out of my class at Monte Cristi High School and get ready for practice. And back then, the NCAA didn't have all of the amount of rules that you can contact a person or be there. I mean, he would be right there with like Coach Brendan Malone, waiting for our practices, our scrimmage games. Every little thing that we had, we go to a tournament in Canarsie or something in Brooklyn, Coach Boeheim was there. So like I said, he outworked everybody. And I think that's how he became the star that he is now. And that's how he's been able to have the longevity that he's had and still be there. It's kind of like the last man standing out of all of these coaches, at least that I started out with anyway. And so I always had a deep respect for him. And I think he realized that. And One of the things, like you said, you asked me about like when things went south for me towards the end of my playing days and stuff. When I came back to Syracuse, he brought me in his office and we were talking and everything. And the one thing that stood out to me, he was like, you've got to start getting focused and you've got to stop thinking about things that you might want to do other than basketball. He said, because he said, the one thing that I want you to keep in your head is that as long as I have a breath in my body, Tony, you're going to be all right, but you've got to do your part. And I think that gave me so much confidence in life to know that, that don't be scared to take a chance on other things, and that Coach Boeheim still has my back. And that meant so much to me at that time that I don't know if I could probably have expressed that to him, Joe,
What was the best aspect of your basketball game as a player? Was it the fact that you were quick, fast, ball handling, shooting, you were a leaper? When you look back, and don't be humble, what did you do well that you just kind of figured out, wow, I could do this better than other players. I might have a future with this game?
Yeah, all the things you said. I'm just kidding. I wish it was all the things you said. As far as shooting, I was just probably much a mid-range shooter. But I had exceptional speed and jumping ability, which always, I think before I even knew how to play, I knew that I could out-jump 99% of the people that were guarding me. So that was kind of like, I don't want to say a gift because I worked hard on using it the right way. But at the other end, it wasn't something that like I did weight training for and everything. I just, before I knew that it was something special, I would take the ball and just stand there and just jump straight up without running to dunk. And I mean, at that time, I was barely 6 feet. And the reaction that I got from people is the only thing that let me know that this is not something that everybody does. So in answering your question, I definitely have to say it was my jumping ability mixed with my speed.
So that's something I've always appreciated. And as I mentioned, I'm a little bit younger than you. And so Charles Barkley being a big guy, but just seeing him jump for his size was just phenomenal. Not comparing you to Charles's size weight-wise, but
Right.
did you more pride when you dunked on somebody or when you blocked somebody's shot or blocked somebody's dunk attempt?
I guess I would have to say towards the latter end, it started being blocking shots because for some reason, people wanted to try to challenge taking me to the basket because they knew my jumping ability. But, and not to sound braggadocious or facetious, in terms of whenever I had a kind of a clear path to the basket or me against you, I guess my reputation had preceded me because after a while, a lot of people stopped. If they saw that I had a little edge going to the basket against them, they wouldn't even jump anymore. They would concede it to me. So, and that's something that I kind of laugh at, and I think it's funny, but I am proud of that. And these were guys that were known to be jumpers themselves. But I realized a little later on that if somebody seen I had to step, they wouldn't even go ahead and jump with me. They'd kind of concede it after a while. But on the other end, on the defensive end, people still try to take it to the basket. And I always took that as a challenge, and it was fun. And some of the memories that stick with you.
And so I apologize for bringing this up, but I live in Vermont, and Vermont had a game against Syracuse several years ago, and I realized you were not on the team. Vermont still cheers about that one win. You guys cheer about wins every year. Being an alumni, seeing that happen, was it devastating, or was that just basketball?
It's funny. I remember that game like it was yesterday, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, we're going to lose this game. I didn't like the tempo. Your coach was on top of his game. It seemed like every move that Coach Boeheim made, your coach checkmated him. And I mean, those guys were just playing out of their heads, and we seemed to be kind of like thinking that that don't worry, somehow at the end of this game we're going to pull it out. And it just I just didn't have that feeling. I kind of felt like this is not going our way. And I knew that Syracuse had a history of these type of upsets every now and then in the NCAAs. And I was living in Albany at the time, so I remember that game well. And I'm just going to congratulate your school on that win. Let's just say that.
Oh, good. Again, Tony Bruin makes up time. Redcollection.net is where you can find some of this old school apparel. Redcollection.net. Make sure you go check that out. But Tony, we just thank you for making the time and being a part. When you have opportunity to speak to younger players besides coaching, what is a life lesson that you really hope they pick up from your experience?
Thanks. That's a good question. What I usually try to leave them with is go for your goals, go for your dreams. But if you are going to do that, do it 100%. Like I said, don't let the other elements take you out of it. If you really want it, then you're going to have to be committed. You're going to have to let some of your friends go. You're going to have to, you're really going to have to downsize your times, with the females. And I don't want to call females distractions, but you just got to really be totally focused, if that's what you want to go for. But on the other end, you got to remember, you got to be just as diligent with your books, because all it takes is one injury and, your basketball, football career, whatever career that you're trying to get, now you're looking at your plan B, and you got to take it serious. I'm like, no matter what accolades that I got early on playing basketball and whatever I did playing basketball, whatever little bit of money I made in Europe playing basketball, the way I take care of my family now is because I was able to get a degree from Syracuse, and I'm able to get myself a job. So, that's what you got to make sure your number one goal is, to try to get you a degree and get you a trade or something where you'll be able to take care of you and your family later on. Another thing that I try to leave them with is, and I didn't learn till later on, but I also think was one of the things that helped me when I had adversity, is try to be good to people, because you never know later on, who you see on your way up is the same people you're going to see on your way down, and I think because I always was nice to people and treated people the way I wanted to be treated, which is something that my family instilled in with me. I had people there that helped me. I had people there that still wanted to provide opportunities for me. And I'm like, when your playing days are over, for whatever reason, age, injury, or just it is what it is time, that's what's going to matter the most, the opportunities that you have after your playing days. So, make the most of meeting other people and doing everything, come out your comfort zone and just try to be all you can be. Don't just be, a one trick pony, get to know other people, get to learn other things and stuff. And, but enjoy everything, enjoy the ride, because the sun don't shine forever. You only guaranteed 15 minutes of sunshine,
Oh, that's so good. And Tony Bruin, I'll get you out on this question. I don't ask it because you are a black man, but you are a black man. And this pandemic has seen a craziness besides just people getting sick and dying with COVID-19. The social injustice piece is something that I believe, my son is a freshman in college, my daughter is a junior in high school, that I really hope they take note to learn from what's taking place so we don't duplicate it, because it seems as though every 5 to 7 years we have this same injustice going on, that I hope we make more progress than we have in the last 5 or 7 years. What say you with all this going on?
Yeah, this is something that has been a real eye opener for me. The first 12 years of my life, you asked me where did I grow up? Well, I went to a Catholic school from first grade to eighth grade. I went to St. Patrick's Elementary School. Needless to say, well, maybe I do need to say, I was probably a minority, maybe of each class that maybe had 17 kids. I probably was maybe one of two of the minority kids in there. And that went all the way through the eighth grade. And then I went to Mater Christi, which was a lot more, well, I don't want to say a lot more diverse, but it was more diverse, but it was a majority of mostly Italian and Greek. And maybe for a class of maybe 20, I was probably one of maybe 4 minorities. So I grew up kind of going to minority schools for the first 12 years, and I had never really experienced a major incident where I thought about prejudice or people being biased to people because of their color of their skin or their culture or religion or everything. And then, of course, when I went to Syracuse, I was more known as a star athlete than a student, so I kind of got looked at different. So I kind of feel like I was, I feel a little, I don't want to say ashamed of myself, but I feel a little bad at myself because I look back and I think I went through a large portion of my life with blinders on and didn't see some of this stuff. And of course, I've heard things, but because it never really happened to me personally, I didn't witness it. I don't know how much credence I put in it. But today, with social media and everything, and I'm going through it, I'm seeing people that I grew up with, and I see them supporting somebody that seems like all they're about right now is dividing people and turning people against each other based on, religions and races and cultures. It's really sad to see. And I would have hoped by now throughout all the things that's happened in history and all the things that we've learned with all of the education that's available to us just by researching it, Googling it, whatever you need to do, that we would have evolved from this point. And it's really it's really sad to see that we haven't. But it's also enough going on, a lot of good things that I see, and a lot of democracy still winning for me to still have hope in the end. And I think the best of us is yet to come. Just have to, like you said, we have to get out and vote, and we just have to all strive to do better and help the next person see.
Oh, I certainly agree. Well, Tony Red Bruin, thanks so much for making the time. We wish you all the best. And for everybody else, go check out redcollection.net, redcollection.net. And we just can't wait for some college basketball. Hopefully it's going to happen. I know players are practicing and getting ready. So let's go Orange. It should be a good year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on the show. It was my pleasure. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit about my clothing line. I'm really excited about that. And it's one of my first times going out my box other than working with kids and stuff. So I appreciate that. And good luck to you and the rest of your endeavors too, Jeff.
Oh, thanks so much. Again, that's Tony Bruin, makes some time at redcollection.net. My name is Jeff Fuller. You are listening to Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube. Subscribe, Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube, and the Backfire podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews on Google Podcasts and iTunes. We thank you so much. Listen to other people's stories because it will make your story much better. Just make that time to learn from one another. We'll be out. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll catch you later. Thanks all.